Hey everybody, it's Daryl coming at you from Holyrad Studio, Soho. Welcome to Fish Out of Water, a monthly Holyrad podcast we created out of popular demand to give you some behind-the-scenes insights on everything that we do here, from operations to mistakes to guests to members, a little bit of everything. We hope to shine a light on some of the really cool stuff that we're doing here, but also to explore together our curiosities and all of the lessons that we learn here together. So today's guest is going to be the one, the only, Elena Franco. Yay! Hey, Elena!
Hi.
So I met Elena probably about 10, 15 years ago. I don't know, something like that. We went to high school together, and no, I did not plan to go into business with her back then. No, we're not that smart. But we were smart to become very close friends, and we even had an opportunity to live with each other a little bit in high school. But over the last about decade or so, from college all the way up to now, we have been living in different cities and maintaining a relationship through phone calls. But let me tell you, these phone calls have been some of the most insightful and fundamental parts of my life, but also essential part of how Holyrad came to be. So without further ado, I'm going to let Elena intro herself.
Hi, I'm Elena Franco, and I'm the Director of Research and Development here at Holyrad Studio. And
yeah, it's a little weird, right?
It's a little weird.
We're still kind of getting used to this whole podcast thing, but yeah, we have Saskia here, head of operations and content, and we're going to be interviewing Saskia in next episode. But Sas, why don't you just start it off by asking Elena some questions?
I mean, I can jump right in by asking you, what is the origin of the title of this podcast? Because Fish Out of Water comes from a conversation that you had with Daryl about how you were feeling in law school.
Yeah. So this was October 2015, and I just was in my first semester of law school. And I got like the lowest grade of my life ever.
And that's a lot, you guys. This woman is capital A academic at this point, yeah?
I mean, for a dyslexic, like, I'd done pretty well. And this was the lowest grade ever on this paper. And my professor just ripped me a new one. And I just was so confused because I was really passionate. I went to law school, full disclosure, to become an environmental lawyer. I was like, anybody who knew me back then, like, that was my fucking oops.
Yeah, we're dropping F-bombs here, you guys. It's just gonna happen. So
that was my vision. It was what I was gonna do. It was how I was gonna contribute, and the law seemed like the best tool to do that. And I just remember calling Daryl and just feeling so defeated because it was like 2 months in, and I was like, guess maybe I'm not cut out for this.
I mean, she really ripped you a new one. I mean, I went to the
dean for it.
Yeah, she basically asked you how you got into law school in the first place because it was so bad that she didn't deserve to be there.
Sloppy, and looked like she said that I hadn't tried hard when I had tried so hard, and I'd gone to her office hours and all that stuff. And for anyone who doesn't know what dyslexia is, it's a neurological difference in my brain where like how, for example, what neurons that fire when Daryl reads are not the same when I read. They're completely different.
Tell us a little bit about like the visual of what your brain looks like on a like scan when you're reading.
So like it's normally the left part of your brain that like lights up to be able to read and actually sound out from the visual letters and the sounds of the word. And for me, I use 100% of my right brain. Those parts never lit up. That's why I was called quote unquote slow. I just eventually learned how to use different parts of my brain. But that's also why like people think my work is sloppy when like I read the correct grammatical sentence. I just didn't realize that wasn't on the page because I know what it's supposed to look like. And so in the legal world, they don't understand that. And so I remember calling Daryl, and she was like, Elena, you're like a fish that's like told to climb a tree. And I was like, you're right. I am a fish, and fish don't climb trees.
Yeah. I know, and like, if you were a monkey and you needed, and that's really kind of the interesting thing, right? It comes from a quote that I found, on a Snapple cap or something like that, but it stuck with me, and it made me think of Elena and so many of the people that I knew, right? If you judge somebody, right, based off of how somebody else gets something done, right? So if I'm judging a fish on how to climb a tree, right? And that is the only form of judgment of whether or not that fish is intelligent. It's gonna look pretty fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But if the test happened to be about swimming, the monkey and the koala would look pretty stupid, right? And so I really wanted Elena to know, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. She's one of the most intelligent, hardworking, insightful people that I know, and I turned to her as my main confidant while I was going through what we discussed in our last episode, which is having no fucking idea what I was doing running a business, but to have a friend to call who understood what it was like to be a fish out of water. Yeah. I had no business background. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I think it just it felt really poignant to have this podcast be based off of that story, because it's I think the one thing that brings so many of us together under the roofs that we have at Holyrad.
Yeah, because the world outside is giving you a cookie cutter way to be and to live your life and what success is, and for the majority of us that just does not fit.
It's like trying to shop at Forever 21. You think those jeans are going to fit everybody? That one fit model is just going to cover all. Like it just doesn't work, right? So so Elle, I think what it's hard, I think, a little bit to ask you questions because I know you so well. So I'm trying to come up with something that I haven't asked before. But for the sake of everybody to get to know you, can you talk a little bit about your journey of getting to that place? Why did you want to become a lawyer? I mean, particularly because being diagnosed with dyslexia at a young age, pursuing academia is not normally what you're told to do, right? So tell us a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, so I come from a family on both sides where education really saved them. My mom's side of the family, which immigrated here in the beginning part of the 20th century, and then my dad, who is from Naples, Italy, and comes from very working class, poor backgrounds. School was really the way out, and it was just the way. And so I always came from a family where my parents work in international issues. And so, I was always really passionate in seeing the world's problems and figuring out different tools that I could use to make a difference, because a lot of people don't have access to basic needs. And even in America, I mean, we have so many problems. And I learned about climate change in college, and it just lit a fire under me. And I looked at all the tools and all the barriers, and the law just seemed like the most logical thing to do. And it never even occurred to me that I'm dyslexic and that I shouldn't do that. I would always, told to just try it. And so I'd been pretty successful in college, worked a lot towards that and a lot of extra hours, but I was used to putting in the work. So I just, it just seemed so natural.
I think that if I remember correctly, you at 7 years old were like stomp up to your mom or dad and go.
I was with my dad, and I was like, I'm gonna be a lawyer, and he was just like, okay, sure. Yeah. But it always stuck. I remember that, and then I kind of lost it in high school. I think I wanted to be a human rights lawyer for a while, and then in college, once I really learned about climate change, I was like, okay, well, this just.
It's the most urgent issue.
It's the most efficient way to get to a place where I can feel like I am either going to file a lawsuit, or I'm going to lobby somebody, or I'm going to write a law bill that becomes, we learned that in the first grade, how a bill becomes a law. Yeah. And I was like, well, if those people are making the decisions, then I got to figure out the tool that they're using so that I can also effectuate change. Yeah. But over time, as a dyslexic person, there's just no space for anybody who thinks differently or needs different things to get the work done.
Why don't we tell a little bit about the story? And I don't even think, Saskia, you know about this. Why don't you tell a little bit about the story of the lawsuit against Kaplan? Or
No, it was actually against LSAC. So right before I applied for law school, for the longest time, if you had any type of disability, they would flag your application, and it would be almost impossible for you to get accommodations to actually take the LSAT, which is the exam to get into law school.
So it's like the SAT or the GMAT, exactly, but for law school.
And the week before I applied, to submit for accommodations, this kid had not gotten accommodations, gone to, I think, UDC Law School, and then UDC Law School had brought a lawsuit against LSAC, which are the people that run this stuff, and basically saying, and they won, saying it was discriminatory to flag applications. So I got accommodations like this because this kid had just won this lawsuit, and I was like, oh my God, it's a sign, I should go, the times are changing.
But that doesn't mean that the institutions were prepared.
They were not at all.
Get it twisted.
So that opened the floodgates. So I was the first year where all of a sudden, kids who maybe wouldn't have gotten into law school because they wouldn't have been able to get a high enough score on the LSAT to even get into a law school because they didn't get accommodations, were able to. But the law schools, and there's the law schools and there's the legal profession, which are two different worlds, and the law schools themselves are not prepared. I mean, they have places where I can get accommodations for a test in school, But as a law clerk, as an actual attorney, it doesn't really exist.
No. And there's something called attorney-client privilege, which means for somebody who thrives on collaboration and communicative
I can't,
learning,
unless it's a co-attorney who's already going to have a lot of work on their plate. I can't ask somebody to double check something for me or to like work with me, or meaning I cannot get any outside help. So as somebody who needs another eye, I just remember feeling so sad. I was like, I don't understand how I'm going to be a lawyer. But then the irony is that I was thriving in law school. I ended up graduating cum laude. I worked at the honors program at the EPA General Counsel. I worked at Earth Justice, and I was like getting all these.
Just so that you guys know who that don't know about the environmental world, like those are probably two of the best internships that you can get in the industry, period. And this girl worked her way into those and opened those doors up for herself. And
all by myself. I didn't know anybody. So I was like, okay, well, I'm doing well. So like this is going to work out. And just as I was working at the EPA, it just became really clear to me that it was not going to be okay, because I was working extra hours, and I just, as a human, started not to be able to function.
Yeah.
Like I was getting the work done. I was getting great. Like, you know, my bosses were loving it, but like my mental health.
Yeah. Can you talk about the culture that was kind of pushed onto all of the students?
Yeah,
to be successful.
Really
in that
cutthroat.
environment?
I mean, in law school, just to explain how it works, like you're literally graded against your class. The way that you get a grade in a class is how well someone else did. So you can know as much as you want, but if someone else wrote a better essay, they're getting the highest grade. So you're literally pitted against your own classmates.
Yeah, it's
and
like
that's
that,
the structure of the entire thing. They're like, you better, if you didn't sleep 4 hours and like join this journal and law clerk here and you're failing. Like it was like, if you don't work yourself to death, it goes back to that same kind of thing we were talking about last episode, that if you don't work yourself to death, you're not trying hard enough, you're not doing well enough.
Like working so hard that you can't even go home to say goodbye to the woman that raised you is a badge of honor of your willingness to sacrifice who you are and where you come from to be what? To do what?
Yeah, and like I already had to work twice as hard as everyone else, and like just to survive, you know, it would take me a lot longer to write the memos and then to like edit them and like all these things.
So let's ground it again back into how you got here, because I mean, it's really insightful, I think, for us to, and it's entirely own its own podcast episode. Wow, you guys, I'm stuttering. To talk about the legal profession and the law school. I mean, let's not talk about systematic stuff quite yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
We're just trying to get to know this wonderful human being right here. So let's kind of track your progress and what landed you here, because even at that point when you were at school, we had no idea or had any.
I mean, you were always like, take a business class, like take a business law class, like help me. And I was always like, yeah, whatever, Daryl.
Selfish reasons.
But I was always kind of like, I don't like, that's not really like, I took one, and it was a tax law professor who taught this like business corporate class, and I just was like, I'm so confused. Like it didn't.
This wasn't where your passion was.
It wasn't. Like I was so passionate about environmental law, but over the years, like we talked, I mean, kind of talked like almost every day. Like,
to get through it. I mean,
like, for 10 years.
I would never say that what I did was as hard as going through law school, because it's pretty hard to do.
But I would say that they were like quite equally. Like when you were awake at midnight, because like you were driving home, like I was still working. So like our schedules were really aligned. And every time like you would tell me about something that you were doing, and we would have conversations, I would just spark something of like, what is that? Sharing? Like, like, is there a law around that? Like, what kind of a system is that? And it just,
who owns what in that system?
And at the same time, like, you know, not to get political at all, but like, you know, Donald Trump had become president, and I had watched all these institutions not think it was a joke, you know, literally think it was a joke, and have to go from scratch into like how they were going to like live the next 4 years.
Because let's not forget, the EPA, when he got elected, is a part of what? The executive branch. So all of a sudden, your bosses were now coal industry people.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were being hired to dismantle what you said you were going to dedicate your life to.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you know, even though I'd gotten it under Obama, and then so all these things were happening at the same time, and just watching, and always the larger conversations we had, right? Like it was always about like, we always saw the issues of the world, and it was, and the way that we would connect Holyrad back to that. It was that piece of like, well, if we're doing this is like an economic piece of this, and like people are able to thrive, and like I am creating like an ecosystem of my business, but then these are also individual. And
we were getting that academic context that I would not have understood. I mean, what I was boots on the ground. There's a problem here. I'm dealing with the symptoms of antiquated operations. I'm dealing with the issue of oversaturated sort of debt in terms of the graduates and
I mean, I'd gone to law school because I was told that I couldn't get the jobs that I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
So I was living part of that thing of why you even were like, no, I'm going to freaking try and build Holyrad because I have a trade. I have an actual service I can exchange for money to thrive, right? That's what we're all trying to get. I'm trying to be hired so that I have money to be like, to be able to live.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole purpose. And so we broke it all down. Like it always got back to like the reasons why I was organizing and lobbying and doing all these things, or like, you know, for the environment.
Because the system isn't working.
It's not working. So I was just at a different
Or at least not for everyone.
Yeah, I was just at a different degree. And so, I mean, I didn't know I was going to join Holyrad probably until I graduated law school. Like it had come to where I was just applying for these jobs that I was like, I'm going to die doing that. Like I could do it, but like at what cost to my physical body? And is that even worth it?
I'd like to also reveal a little bit, even to Saskia, because it's funny, like we talk to each other every day, but I'm not even sure how much Saskia knows about this part of the story. And it was the realization that the issues that I was kind of itching at, kind of scratching at, were pervasive across almost every person that was trying to enter the economy at the time. I'm also not talking about recent graduates, although of course, having been recent graduates, those are the people that we were talking to the most. But anybody trying to make an idea a reality, an economic reality, I mean, it's systematic gatekeepers, right? And not even necessarily because there's some evil man behind that coat and like behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz, but because people are not creating intersectional, like not creating intersectional dots, right? They're not connecting those dots, right? It's very rare for a student in law school, right, to be having daily, deep, like emotionally taxing conversations about the issues that a freelance artist was having in New York City. I mean, talk about two completely different worlds, but the intersection of those conversations, we started connecting some really powerful dots. And I think that's what led you to realize that, ironically, you might even be more effective in the private sector than the public.
And that's the irony of the entire thing is the reason I got into law school is because it's these big private corporations that are like the 1%. And I must learn to fight them. And so if I create laws or I file lawsuits or whatever, I organize like in the grassroots level. But the irony is that you keep hitting a wall because they still have tools to go about the same tools that I'm trying to, like, if I write a new law, they'll just lobby and get someone to like rewrite a rule that like excludes them.
So you're keeping at bay.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the irony of joining Holyrad. And I think really my title of like research and development and this thing that you're like, how does Holyrad have an R&D department? Isn't that for like a product in like a tech company or something? It's like, no, it's because the issues that we're dealing with and why I'm even here is about the larger picture. It is about connecting those dots. And it's like the same time that you called me and you're like, NYU won't let me take a business class. And I was like, I'm sorry, an academic, you're literally there to learn and they're like preventing you from learning.
I wasn't smart enough because I only got into Tisch, and you have to be smarter if you want to get into Stern.
But also I'd like to point out that at Tisch, only 54 out of 128 credits goes to your craft.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
That is
so
true.
why couldn't, I can't do the math, but why couldn't the rest of those credits involve a business class?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I don't want to speak against the institution because there's so many wonderful people that I met there, and I'm very grateful to have had the privileged opportunity to go get an education. Having said that, I also reserve the right to critique it, and that 100%. Critique is that if you create a business, if you go out into the world and you go to, let's just talk about MoMA or David's Werner, right? Private or public arts organization. Is there not a CFO? Is there not an accountant? Is there not a lawyer? So even within Tisch, do you know how rare it was for Tisch film students to even actually hire actors from Tisch, or did they go outsource them?
Exactly.
They outsource them. So intersectionality, creating community underneath one roof is something that's so important,
And I think this opens up to kind of like my journey, one kind of continuing to hold the hat as a lawyer and my struggle with that in the first year, which was I had felt like I had worked so hard. I graduated cum laude. I had done so well, especially after my first grade, in law school, and feeling the need to kind of be a lawyer, right? The need to keep that identity and to take the bar and to like do that because I thought that I should bring that to Holyrad. Because I had never seen a lawyer not be an actual lawyer in a business setting or in any setting.
We come back to the whole fish out of water thing, right?
Never seen
lawyers become lawyers. That's what they do.
That's what they do. They don't do anything else. I had never thought of the concept of like not becoming a lawyer and just using all of my knowledge and just being a smart business person.
Yeah.
and a smart business owner because I had that knowledge, you know, and I learned that the hard way, even though I should have listened to my gut, but I don't regret taking the bar and then not passing the bar by like 2 points. You know, that's something that's like still kind of hard for me, but at the same time, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to share the law. I want to teach it. I want to create, like, take everything I learned in law school, which was flow charting and bringing the visual piece that no one wants to read through that dense text. Fuck that shit. That shit sucks.
I don't know if anybody has gotten a contract from a client or even to like, I don't even know, like rent a car, but it is pages and pages and pages.
Or ever read a terms and agreement.
Like, ain't nobody want to read that. But guess what? What's in there could hurt you. There's a lot of things in there that's essential for you to know.
So you want to be an equalizer. You want to fix that.
I want to draw the law. Yeah. I want to create visual things that will help people navigate because the law is a fundamental like roadmap of how we've decided in our society that we're going to live and determine morality. Whether I agree with it or not, that is the tool. And that's also why I went to law school because I was like, that seems really important to understand. Like of all the things, it's like being a doctor, like how the body works, how to heal it. Like,
so what's your vision now? I think, what was it? I think that finally got you to say, you know what, fuck it.
It was working and studying for the bar, teaching it to myself and being miserable, but also realizing that like, I couldn't even be the lawyer that I wanted to be in the way that I wanted to be because of how unique our business structure is and all the barriers I would have encountered, right? And so actually releasing that identity and just realizing that like that knowledge doesn't go anywhere. I'm just a regular human being that just happens to have the ability to understand the law and to use the law and to understand and to share it. I want to share it. That's not what being a lawyer is. Yeah. Being a lawyer is you come to me and I will, you know, help you in your specific instance navigate that. I want to share the law. It's essential for people to understand. So that's like one piece. But then the other piece is really to study the business model. And I think that's something that I've really gaining a lot of skills in is how are we thriving as a business? What are the deep data points, right? Like how are our spaces thriving, right? Like
what's the actual upward mobility of our members? Yeah.
Are they actually seeing a difference from our resources?
Are our programs even working?
Yeah. And how much space occupancy is being used, you know, Saskia is great with the numbers and really like looking at that and being like, okay, well, like how can we improve? Or wow, last year Clinton Hill was like 50% commercial, 50% member. Now it's probably like 25-75. Like what does that say for the larger vision when we want to share this model with other people? And also, we don't necessarily want to franchise. What are all the other creative legal ways that we can share this model with people that don't necessarily have
Hold on, I just want to stop for a second. She said creative legal ways. That's so powerful. I do not know very many people who have put legal and creative in the same sentence. And I think that that's something that is so inspiring for me to look at you, Elena, is that you gave yourself permission to change your mind inside and to use the skills you had against all of that sort of indoctrinated sort of like lawyers become lawyers. Like you go to law. In my world, right? Photographers and artists, you get to be fluid. You're constantly changing. You're a unique butterfly in an ocean of blandness. Like that's what you are. And so I just want to commend you for how powerful it is to just be around you as an example of you can create your own reality and you do not have to fit and shave yourself off into this cookie cutter thing. That's not normal. It's just an operational convenience that we've baked into our system that we seem to all agree on for whatever reason.
I think it was also seeing the pressure that your education had put on you to follow exactly what you had done in school. And when you didn't pass the bar and you found out, and I came to your apartment and I said, do you even want to be a lawyer, or do you feel like that's what you have to do because you went to school for it? Like, do you actually want to be writing our contracts at the studio, or do you feel like that's your duty?
I can still do that, just I'm not the lawyer. And that was such a powerful, Saskia, when you said that to me, like, why do you feel like you need to do this? Like, just because you went to school for it, and
why can't you change your path?
Why? And I just remember being like, wait,
such a good question.
I don't know. Like, I don't lose the knowledge. I'm still the individual, and I can still do what I want to do. But I had been so stuck in that box that like and everyone around me, I mean, my own mentors in law school told me not to come to New York and to like be in business with my best friend. They were like, that's go work for a law firm. Like, what are you doing? You know? And I just was like, did you not see how much I almost died just trying to get this, like all these accolades?
But maybe they died and they need to justify. Like, that's, I think, something that Saskia even told, I think you told me that one time. It's just like, why do people intern, right? When they don't get any of the credit and do all the work for their person that they're working for free. And I think, what did you say?
Oh, I said because the person they're working for had to do that for someone else.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
well, now it's your turn because I did that.
Yeah.
I suffered, so now you suffer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whoa, what a concept. Like, that should not be replicated.
No.
Right? And that's very much the Holyrad move is like, this was my story, this was my struggle, but let me like make a situation, right, with these tools, and actually I can maybe make it better, and I make it a little bit easier for the next people who are graduating and losing all their resources.
You know the irony of all that? It makes us just as much money.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. I mean, I think this goes back to like, it was really hard for me to let go of my identity as a lawyer, as an environmental lawyer, right? And Holyrad is just such a place for the merging of all that and the releasing of identities and the creating of things that have never been created before, right? Which has come from the intersection of everything, which is what this business
But
is.
also continuing to learn outside of an education.
Yeah,
you know,
I
like
love
even
learning. I
teaching,
hate school.
You know, when I sat with you, I said that I also felt a lot of pressure that I had to be the only one editing at Holyrad, and I had to be the only one shooting at Holyrad because I went to school for it.
Yeah.
But I've been sitting with you and teaching you how to do that, and now you set up the camera and you shoot. But that wasn't learned in an institution. That was taught by someone else, you know, after that
I never even considered being an artist. I never thought that was like, you know, that path, right? And now I know how to produce, and like I know how to like be an
She set up the
assistant.
lights here?
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Set up
know,
the
and
camera.
the camera, and I, you know minimal editing in Premiere, and at least like kind of how to use InDesign a little bit, you know, like didn't even know what those things were. Had no idea a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean, I just am kind of like having a looking back on it now moment, and it's just, it feels so right, and we could have never predicted it, and all that you did was just take a chance on yourself, and it's great.
No, I feel very lucky, you know, all of our conversations always so inspired me, you know, like just because you're such a doer and I'm more in the clouds sometimes, but just watching you be like, okay, no, and this, and like go, like it just was like, because that's what I was doing in like all of my other activist self. Like I was organizing and I was part of all these different communities that were like fighting this or fighting that, but like it just seemed like to hit a dead end. But like you took that same mentality, those same skills, and we're doing it in this other
further. You just go one more step.
And just watching you do that, I was like,
Yeah.
huh. And then to start researching and to see that like a lot of other people were talking about very similar things, and there are all these other people doing this and these different things, and that like that this is a real thing that you can, there are new ways to do business that aren't harmful.
I mean, I think you even found a law book that was about using the law.
Shout out to Janelle Orsi.
We love Janelle Orsi.
We love you, Janelle Orsi.
What's the book called, actually, if people want to read it?
It's called
The Law in the Sharing Economy?
Yeah, something like that.
Janelle Orsi, Jane.
I don't know how to spell her name.
I don't know.
Anyways,
just Google it.
She has, it's called the I can't remember she has her own kind of like nonprofit like law firm, but she wrote this whole book on like what does the sharing economy look like for lawyers, and that looks like we already have that, right? It goes back to like how the whole concept of Holyrad aren't new ideas, like co-op models, like all of a sudden the
bartering probably existed before money,
literally,
and now illegal.
Yeah, I know. But you know, well, it seems to me that we are got to have a podcast just specifically about like why the law is not meant to actually do anything but keep us in the same system of like what we like to call domination and control. But at the end of the day, it's also about how you can use a tool that people think is the root of all evil, like money and the law, and you can actually use it as a tool for good. And so let's just pin that. We'll see if we can get back to that conversation.
I think it goes just like the concept, and that for me was really powerful, was that everything can be neutral, positive and negative, and once, you know, and really seeing that I didn't have to be a lawyer in that way, and I could still, everyone deals with the law every single day. Walking across the street, like
buying anything.
Like agreeing to like some new app that you're downloading. You just agreed to like, I don't know, be part of the centipede, like in
agreeing to anything.
You know, and especially as the economy changes and the institutions that we fight so hard to do things don't always do things. So how can we ourselves, right? That goes back to like be empowered and
not wait.
Yeah.
Not wait for somebody to give you permission. Yeah. So we've got like a couple of minutes left. I feel like Saskia we know each other really well, and we have gotten to know each other really well as partners over the last like 2 years. But I'd be curious, like, what don't you know about Elena? Have we already run through it all?
I mean,
or what do you think people would want to know?
I wish that I could show people what you look like after the bar finished. And what you look like now. Because that was, and I remember when you called and you said, or you texted and you said you didn't, you didn't pass. And I went to your apartment and I looked at you and you looked like you had poison injected into you from like the last year. And it is completely removed now. And I also said to you that you hate the bar, you hate everything it stands for. And the universe was telling you that if you hate it, you're not going to pass it and you will not carry it with you.
Yeah, no, that was one of the most powerful conversations. And
Sorry about the little, I'm not sure if you guys can hear the ambulances right now, but we're like coming at you real live from Soho. So
yeah. And I mean, as we go into your interview, Saskia, it'll be revealed how much our stories are so similar and how important that specific moment was in my life, because even though I was getting supposedly rejected, which at the end of the day I was like working, taught myself everything by myself.
There was so much to celebrate.
Like taught myself all these areas of law that I had like literally by myself. Like as we're like doing a Kickstarter, opening up a second location, like
she was still working, you guys. She only took the month of July off.
And all because I thought I should. Yeah. All because I thought I should, and the liberation of being like, actually, no.
Whoa.
And actually, like, wait a minute, those skills, that knowledge doesn't go anywhere. I still learned so much about like random areas of law that like actually are going to come in real, again, that's my role as research and development. Like it's all going to come full circle.
And let's not forget the fact that once you become a barred lawyer, you are then committed to an attorney-client privilege structure, which means that every single time, if Elena had passed the bar and decided to become a fully barred lawyer, she would have had to take on the liability of the advice that she was giving.
Yeah, which would have blocked me from doing office hours, right? Because
and educate other people.
Yeah.
Something that I want people to share, I want to share for people is not to put down the legal profession, because let me tell you, there are lawyers out there.
Lawyers are important.
Who are
making a difference.
Making a huge amount of difference. And there should be an incredible amount of respect for those individuals. At the same time, why don't we close out on a little bit of a story that you learned in law school about why you become a lawyer and why it's licensed? You remember what that was? How come lawyers have jobs?
Oh, wow, I can't believe I forgot this. Lawyers have jobs because we write the contracts. We write the law. The reason why you got to take out a book of definitions of all these legalese is because we make it complicated so that you keep hiring us. Because if you figured it out yourself, and this is not to shit on all the lawyers, but like, you all know this is true. The reason why we exist and are still a powerful profession is because we've made it so complicated that you can't do it by yourself. You need an expert outside of yourself. And the Holyrad mood is that you need to be your own boss and you need to be empowered. You may not need to be a master, but learn the tools enough and find the people that can help you. But everybody should be able to understand the law enough to be able to navigate. Yeah. That to me is crazy, that like you must rely on somebody else
to participate in democracy.
Like what?
To protect yourself.
To protect yourself.
But let's save some of that for another day, because it's a fantastic topic to explore. But I just want to say thank you guys again for coming and listening to us today. This is episode 2. Yeah. We've got another wonderful episode coming on next month, where we're going to be interviewing the beautiful, sensational, dynamic, young star Saskia de Borgraaf.
Yes.
So definitely stay tuned for that. We're going to talk a little bit about her story and what she does here, and hopefully it'll resonate with you too. So thank you and good night.
Good night.